So thank you everybody for joining this session. Today I will present you this paper, which is about income inequality before and after redistribution in South Africa. So in the early 1990s in South Africa, it was the end of 45 years of apartheid. Apartheid, as we all know, is one of the most extreme systems of racial segregation in modern history. In 1994, there was the election of Nelson Mandela, and there were great hopes that the situation would change. Since then, there's been major reforms of the public system, including the great rise in social transfers, with the objective to reduce inequality, and in particular racial inequality. So then the questions of this paper is, how did income inequality change before and after redistributions since 1994, so since the end of apartheid? And in particular, more specifically, did the racial income gap decline? So income has both a private and a public side, and in fact, if you measure income just using labor, capital, or mixed income, you're losing part of the story, because the state levies some taxes and then redistributes it in the form of public like monetary transfers or public services. So we will try to measure income taking into account both of these sides, and because ignoring public intervention can lead to misleading welfare comparison across countries, within countries, across individuals, and also across Europe. So previously, tax and benefit literature in South Africa is quite extensive, but so far it's been focusing either specifically on some specific tax instrument or for some specific period, specific year. And the methodologies used so far provide little like comparability between micro evidence and macro statistics. And so here we try to improve on that, both by taking a broad scope, like a broad temporal scope, so looking at everything that has happened since 1994, and also try to be reconciliating the micro and macro data. So to do this, we apply the distributional national account methods. So we combine all surveys, specifically income and expenditure surveys available since 1994, all tax tabulation data, as well as all national accounts data and historical detailed budget data since 1994. So a lot of data to say. And we reconcile micro and macro data by rescaling micro data to macro one. So that in the end, the micro aggregate would match the macro aggregate. So let me go now through the method step by step. We will define different income concepts that will reflect the different intervention, different moments of the intervention of the state. So first, factor income. So we harmonize the 7 income and expenditure surveys for the years that are available. Then we interpolate the missing years by reweighting combinations of the years available, the nearest years available. This will allow us to sort of plug the macro and national admin data in between the years for which we have no income surveys. We adjust the top incomes for all years, right, using income tax tabulations, so as to not underestimate inequality at the top, as was previously mentioned, because that's a risk with surveys. And then we rescale to national account income components, all the factor income components. This is a snapshot for 2018, racial inequality as measured with factor income. And so this is just to highlight already now in the presentation that, as you can see, income distribution, measured at factor income, is still in 2019 extremely racially predicted by race. Next, we go from factor income to what I call here pre-tax income, taking into account the impact of pension and unemployment. So we add to income the benefits of pension, the benefits of unemployment, and we subtract the contributions that are made. We also exploit information about domestic remittances. So remittances received or made to foreign countries are ill-measured, so we don't use them. But we measure remittances that are made between households within South Africa, right? So we also incorporate this sort of this form of pre-tax redistribution. Yet it's worth mentioning that these tools in the South African case have very little role compared to other redistributive mechanisms, as can be highlighted with this picture. You can see that Overall, there is some redistributive form, but pension system will, redistribution of the pension system and the unemployment system is concentrated at the top. There is some larger redistribution operated thanks to the remittance mechanism, but it still represents something like 1% of GDP. So overall, this is not what will explain the shift that will be shown. Now we need to go from pre-tax to taxes, so to post-tax, and so we need to simulate the incidence of the entire tax system, and so that's sort of one slide for a lot of work. So we micro-simulate the entire personal income tax, the history of personal income tax, so all shifts, like all tax schedules, all different thresholds. We distribute corporate income tax and capital income tax based on measured equity. Thanks to the surveys. We allocate value added also based on observed expenditures, taking into account exemptions, shift in exemptions, reforms in exemptions, as well as informal distribution, measured as buying in an informal market, as said in the surveys. We also use input and output table to allocate trade and excise taxes. And last, we use, again, thanks to the information about local consumption and detailed admin data, we allocate all taxes that are collected at the municipal level. So this is a snapshot still again in 2019 to show you the distribution of taxes. And so long story short, the overall system is regressive at the bottom, progressive at the top. Why? Because at the top, the richest 20% pay personal income tax as well as corporate income tax or dividend tax. But because, in fact, like consumption through informal market is not so prevalent in South Africa. In fact, as a percentage to market income, VAT and excise duty are quite regressive, including also like local taxes. Note that here the incidence is quite large, right? It's 80%. So 80% of their only 5 minutes. 80% of their income is being sort of paid in taxes, but in fact this is pre-redistribution income. So you have to think like this profile shifts if you include then the transfers that they receive, right? And last, we go from post-tax to public we also include public transfers. So here I'll be very quick, unfortunately for sake of time, and to show you the results. But all monetary transfers, a little bit like the personal income tax, we also allocate them based on eligibility, on observed characteristics, and all the rules. And public services, here they're valued at cost. I'll be quick here because actually this is such a big part of the paper that it has become a separate paper. So we plug in the results of these allocation of public services at cost based on admin data, thanks to the other paper. Snapshot again in 2018, very progressive allocation of transfers. And in fact, it has become more so. So this is the result of the entire transition. So, okay, now the results. So how did growth evolve in South Africa since 1994? So you have like a big boom until the crisis, and then stagnations or recession since 2011. So in fact, if this is like real income growth as a percentage of 1993. So as a consequence, inequality has increased until the crisis and then decreased. Racial inequality has decreased. So here you see that the income share, the market income share, before redistribution, that's the share by a racial group. Just to remind also that here, just to read this graph, it's important to keep in mind, if you don't know about the context, that the share of the white population has decreased from 13% to 8%. Still, in 2019, they still received 55% of total factor income. And the question is, what has gone under? Like, what are the driving forces of this evolution? So, if you look at the evolution of real averages per racial group, this is the picture that you have. So. Sizable increase of the real income of the white, and it seemed like maybe modest, or in relative terms, the progression has not been that modest for other groups, but it's still quite low. But importantly, what is important is to look at what has happened at the top 10 income group, right? So only they have increased really tremendously during the period. And if you look at the gross incidence curve from 1993 to 2019, you can see that, the one that benefited most from the entire period are the top 10% of the black income group. That's the large yellow bar. So their income increased by 220%. So how did inequality evolve after the entire government redistribution? So the system has always been redistributive in some way, even just at the end of apartheid, but it has become even more so, both thanks to the increase in the progressivity of monetary transfers, but also thanks to the increase in progressivity in public services. So here we break down this Gini coefficient by concept, so disposable income, adding health and education transfers, and post-tax. And the racial income gap has also decreased after some worsening up until the crisis. But overall, the system has not necessarily become more efficient at reducing the racial income gap. In fact, it has become a bit less efficient at reducing the racial income gap. And why so? Then we come back to the story of the top 10% black income group. So this is the net gain of the entire redistribution system split across racial group, right? And so you see, it seems that nothing has changed so much, right? So in the end, so black people as a group receive a little more than 10% of GDP worth of net transactions thanks to the net redistribution, net gains from the redistribution system, while white population as a group basically lose, quote unquote, 12%. But now if you again split the black income group by taking the top 10% away, you can see that they were receiving zero in the beginning of the presentation, and zero is also the time that I have left to explain you this graph. So, but they've become net losers over the period, while the bottom 90% of the black have increased their share of net benefit from the system. Yes, so overall, inequality has not decreased compared to its levels since the end of apartheid. But the racial income gap has decreased thanks to the rise of top black income group. And post-tax, the entire system has become more redistributive overall, especially thanks to transfers, but not across race. In particular because, in fact, top black income groups are now paying more taxes than they used to. That's it for me. Thank you.